Good morning and welcome to today's webinar with Ocean State Signal and Applied Information. Before we get started, I want to just give you guys a couple of housekeeping. So if you want to enable speaker view in the top right corner, that'll give you the best viewing experience for today's webinar. And then we want to keep things interactive. So in the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box, and that's where you can chat in questions, and we'll make sure to get to those throughout our webinar today. But before we dive in, I want to hand it over to Mike to welcome everybody, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next session in Ocean State Signal's online vendor series. Today's session will be with Applied Information. They'll be speaking about their emergency vehicle preemption and transit signal priority technology. And with that, I will hand it back over to Emily and Peter.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm Emily Stoniecki with Applied Information. I'm the sales manager for the East region. And today I've got Peter Ashley, our VP of Business Development and resident expert on preemption and priority. So we're going to cover a couple different things. We'll talk a little bit about who Applied Information is, and then, dive into preemption and priority. We'll take a look at some of the technology. We've got, the actual technology components that we're talking about today right here. And then, as you can see behind us, we are here at the Infrastructure Automotive Technology Laboratory, so we can actually see this technology in real life and practice. So Applied Information, we are based out of Atlanta, Georgia, so just north of the city, and we're approximately just under 100 employees now, predominantly engineers. So we work with a lot of smart folks, thankfully, and we are deployed in, Peter, what would you say, approximately 600
somewhere around there
cities at this point, and close to 2,000 devices coast to coast. 20,000. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. I'm missing a zero there. So from coast to coast, and most recently in Hawaii. So we just had a large deployment with connected vehicles get kicked off in Hawaii. So anyways, our core products, we focus on, if you have been a part of the series with us already, school beacons. So we've got a series with Ocean State on school beacons that you can take a look at. And then we've covered connected intersections and monitoring. Today, the focus will be preemption and priority. And then I believe our next upcoming webinar with Ocean State is going to cover connected vehicles in more detail. So let's talk preemption and priority. So emergency vehicle preemption and transit signal priority are the two things we want to focus on today.
Yeah.
Let's start with emergency vehicles. What is this? What all can we do with this? What is Applied Information utilizing? And we'll just start there.
It's a great question. And, the concept behind emergency vehicle preemption is to provide green lights to emergency vehicles. That's the ultimate goal. So what we're doing is we're providing green lights using a multitude of different technologies. And the first one is we're using the GPS of the vehicle, where it's heading and where it's going. And then we're utilizing two forms of communication. We're utilizing 900 megahertz radio for line of sight radio directly to the intersection. And then we're also using cellular communication, which is going over the cell network down to the intersection. And that's providing a redundant communication path that we can do emergency vehicle preemption. And we always like to say, if you're not seeing a green light, your emergency vehicle preemption system is not configured and working correctly. We should always guarantee that you get a green light. So that's the basis behind emergency vehicle preemption. Now, there's a lot of different technology involved in how you actually make this happen. And what we'll do is we'll look through probably some slide pictures that I can explain some of the concepts to you, as well as have a look at the physical boxes and take a little walk around to see, what all this technology is in action.
Awesome. So let's take a look at, just kind of how our system operates. I think we've got a slide or two that Peter can pull up and some videos that will really showcase how Applied Information's preemption system works?
So the important thing is obviously, providing the green lights to emergency vehicles and transit vehicles. We're utilizing the 900 megahertz in the cellular. It's pretty quick and easy to deploy, and it also works with connected vehicle technology. And we'll show a little bit of that later when we show a couple of these videos of it actually running in action. The important part is actually looking at this presentation, this picture here, because you'll see that you're getting the GPS position of the vehicle, which it's getting from the satellites up here. However you draw a satellite, but it's getting the GPS position for the vehicle. And it's sending that information over 900 megahertz radio directly to the intersection, as well as over cellular back down to the intersection. But the great thing with cellular is it allows you to talk to this intersection, but also the intersection that's up here, the intersection that's down here, the intersection that's down there, so that you can prepare all of your signals in advance. So one of the problems with radio communication is it's great line of sight communication. But when you're going to do a around the corner or over the hill, radios don't work. So what we've done is a lot of the time someone's turning left at a signal, turning right. So we hook into, the left turn indicator, the right turn indicator, the emergency light bar, and the stop, the emergency brake, to provide emergency vehicles with preemption around the corner, so we can tell the intersection on the left that there's an emergency vehicle coming, or on the right there's an emergency vehicle coming, so it can start preparing itself. A lot of the cities have got these very, very tight intersections, 500 feet apart. And that just doesn't give enough time. So you've got to send those signals in advance. And with our solution, it allows you to continuously modify, improve the preemption so that you can do these around the corner, these over the hill use cases. Another key technology that's involved in the emergency vehicle preemption is the enhanced GPS. And why that's so important is, you guys have dealt with GPS systems before, and what happens is, you have a Garmin or a TomTom or whatever it is, and you drive out, and it takes a while to get connected to the satellites. So what we've done is we've actually got connected vehicle, for the autonomous vehicles, technology built into our vehicle units. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to track vehicles indoors. Now, emergency vehicles indoors a lot of the time, or they're in canyons, in between buildings, especially the transit vehicles. So that allows us to actually track them very well, so that even when they're leaving their emergency, their actual fire station, they can get priority at preemption at that first intersection, and they can even set up rules that preempt not just the first intersection, but the next intersection and the next intersection down the line. So there's so much flexibility in the system, and all of the intelligence sits in, the intersection over here, so that, when you've got a vehicle coming, there's no one single point of failure. So it's not like the central system is the only system controlling it. All the intelligence is here. So if the cell network goes down, it still works with the radios. And if anything happens to the central side, everything still works. But what's really important is there's also this number 3 over here, which provides remote monitoring of the system. So we can tell you whenever there's a failure, when there's a power failure event, if one of the radios has stopped working. So all of that's built into the system. So, there's a lot of technology here that we're using, but the key aspect here is the cellular communication that gives that very, very long distance away from signals. That makes a massive difference. And you'll see this next screen is showing you, what you see in the Glance application. So Glance is our central system application that you can monitor, where all of these vehicles are. If they're in an emergency situation, you can see the lines getting drawn behind the vehicle, showing you if they were orange, they would be in an emergency situation. Right now, these are all blue, and you can see all of your intersections on the map, which is showing you all that kind of information. Also, all of your intersections are listed over here, so you can click on any intersection whenever you want, and it'll bring up more details about that that device. And when you go in, you know, a bigger city, this is city of Baton Rouge, they've got 460 intersections, 80 vehicle units, and yeah, it works the same in a very, very small city as well as a big city. And this is the key aspect behind a distributed, connected intersection and connected fire emergency vehicle preemption, is you can deploy this on one vehicle, one intersection, or on 400, 500, 600, whatever number of devices you have. And you can do it in a slow progress if you want. You know, you can start off with 5 and build it up, because what we do is we don't charge something for the software. Everything comes with the devices themselves. So it's very much of a very easy to deploy system, and also increase it. Emily, have you got any questions while I'm, otherwise I hate it when I go through these presentations and I show a couple of the technology and then.
So I think from my perspective, something I always like to start with is, just so you know, for context, as Peter's going through this, you know, there's 2 key components when he is referencing these items, you know, throughout the presentation. You know, the actual vehicle unit itself. So thank you. I thought that was right next to me. So this is what actually goes in the emergency vehicle, and then the cabinet component. So that's what we've got sitting in front of us, the 2 form factors. So a smaller, you know, it's technically identical, right, to our larger box. And I'll let Peter speak a little bit more about these, but I think it's just helpful to visually see and understand what we're talking about as we're going through the presentation.
So this is the vehicle unit, and you'll see there's a bunch of lights in the front of it that just tells you that it's working. What's really important is there's no user interaction. They don't have to press any buttons or anything like that. We activate emergency vehicle preemption based on the lights. If the lights are on and flashing, emergency vehicle preemption is active. And then we hook into the left turn indicator, right turn indicator, key on switch, emergency brake, to automatically deactivate emergency vehicle preemption, or you know, do a left turn rule, a right turn rule. So very, very simple to put in. We also have a little switch box that we'll show you when we do the walkthrough for DOTs and cities to actually test the system. Then on this unit over here, this is the standard unit. So like in the Northeast, like in the Boston area, in Cambridge, and in city of Quincy, they've got this unit deployed for the emergency vehicle preemption. And there's a dial over here that allows you to test if if you've programmed everything correctly. You just press a button over here and turn the dial, preempt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can test whether or not you've programmed the traffic controller correctly. And then on the back side, there's a whole bunch of inputs and outputs for monitoring the traffic signal. Do you have power at the traffic signal? Do you have, is your battery backup system working? Is the cabinet in flash? Is your conflict monitor working? And so on and so forth. And then we've got a 4-port Ethernet switch over here, where when you've got a smaller cabinet or you don't have communications and you want to get communications to your cabinet, just plug in everything inside of these different ports over here, and it's going to get you connected. So generally people are plugging in their conflict monitor, the traffic signal controller, your video cameras, you know, video detection, PTZ cameras. And then you'll see over here, this is the GPS cell 900 megahertz radio antennas that get plugged in here. And this is a hub that you can actually do video streaming over cellular. You can do, you know, the communication to your traffic controller from your ATMS system. So you can control absolutely everything through this box, as well as do emergency vehicle preemption. So this box doesn't just do one application, it does multiple different applications. And then over here, there's a couple of switched outlets that you can actually turn on and off. So if you've got a network switch that fails from time to time, or a CCTV camera that you want to restart, you can actually plug those into the back here and remotely restart them. So the preemption box, the great thing with this is it gives a functionality to the emergency vehicle and transit agency, but gives a big benefit to the DOT and the city that you want to deploy. You know, if there are other competitors on the market that are doing emergency vehicle preemption and transit signal priority, but that don't give any benefit to the traffic department. They just give priority and that's it. This is actually bringing the traffic department and the emergency services and the transit services together to the table, because each person wins out of it. Now, sometimes funding comes from transit, sometimes it comes from fire, sometimes it comes from the traffic. And what it means is everybody's pooling into the same place where everybody gets a benefit out of it. So I think that's really important, Emily, to talk about, you know, the hardware that goes in.
Yeah, I think, you know, Peter, like you were just mentioning, the really cool thing that we've been experiencing, you know, really in the last 2 years or so is getting fire and the city at the table at the same time, and both of them being able to see the benefits that this system can provide. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the glance system and the types of data that we're able to see, both from maybe a monitoring perspective and then from the emergency system? You know, what kind of things are we seeing? What kind of results are we getting? We can talk about some case studies, you know, right here in Alpharetta and surrounding Marietta. We've got some large deployments with the emergency preemption systems. So
sure, that's an absolute great idea. I'll go through a couple of more of the slides that are going to show the information that you'll see through the glance system. And we can talk a little bit further and then maybe go for a little walk around.
Yeah, and I think we've got some great videos too, not to, I don't know at what point you want to share these, Peter, but we've got some phenomenal snippets of just, you know, success stories and how this is working for others. I think that's a great,
sure,
you know, thing to see.
So you've got access to everything via the glance system. It's all Google Maps based, so you can turn on the different layers, being satellite view or street view and the normal map view that you're seeing right now. So it's everything that you're used to. And you can turn on device names and locate devices and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. What is really important is you can track where the emergency vehicles are going. So we do a replay, and this replay allows you to select a time. So it's from this time to this time, and you select a vehicle, and it'll actually track and the vehicle, and you can play, pause, stop it of exactly where that emergency vehicle is going. What that does is it allows you to see how did someone respond to an event. And mainly people are going to use this when something goes wrong. You know, why did he take that route to go to this emergency event? Or sometimes what does happen quite often, the fire chief says, well, where were you guys on XYZ time? And he can go look, well, hey, they were at the Chick-fil-A, you know, buying their lunch, which is fine, but that's where they responded from. Because really important is if a fire department leaves and goes out anywhere, they have to be fully equipped so that they can leave from that area to go and respond to an emergency. So you can actually see their start and stop time of every emergency vehicle trip, which is really, really important. The next one is, I'm going to go in and jump into a video that's actually going to show how the emergency vehicle system actually works. So, you know, this is City of Marietta here. And, you know, this is an emergency vehicle responding. What's really important, I'm just pausing over here. they have already connected to the first traffic signal straight as they turn their emergency lights on. And their first emergency vehicle is really close by here. So they turn left out of here, and you'll see how quick they arrive at the first signal. It's just there. So as they arrive there, there's the first signal, and it's already stopped all the traffic in all the other directions and flushed out the traffic ahead of them. And now when they're driving towards this next signal, we already connected all the way down the line to stop all the traffic ahead to, and I'm going to see if I can pause here, and you'll see over there, you see how the signal is green with the left turn and the straight. That brings all the other traffic to a halt and makes it safe for the emergency vehicles to transfer through. And you can see the next signal. You see how ahead you can already see all of those vehicles are stopped there. So that allows all the vehicles ahead to move out the way, and it allows these emergency vehicles not to have to worry about slowing down and making sure that someone's not going to turn left across them while they're transferring through there. This was a key aspect there. You saw how we were going around the corner towards the signal. With the traditional optical solutions or the traditional radio-only solutions, you couldn't do this type of preemption because it was around the corner. Radio just can't talk around the corner. It can't talk over a hill. It's just the physical aspects behind it. So this cellular aspect behind it is causing the preemption to be transmitted way ahead of the vehicle actually arriving so that you can stop the vehicles ahead of time. You're going to see something quite interesting, which is the connected vehicle aspect coming up right now.
Emergency vehicle approaching from behind.
So that is the Travel Safely smartphone app. And this is something we're going to be talking about in our next session, our next webinar with Ocean State, is the connected vehicle side. So this actually allows consumers to get a message that an emergency vehicle is approaching. The cars are so well insulated today that they don't know where the emergency vehicle is coming from. Is it coming from the left? Is it coming from the right? Is it coming from the front, or is it coming from behind? You just hear this faint sound in the background, and then people panic. Mm-hmm. So this is telling them that someone's actually approaching from behind to actually provide that warning to the drivers.
And while you have this, audio and visual, application in your car, the preemption system is also directing the traffic. So those two things combined it's really powerful. And that's where we're, seeing some really cool things in the cities that we're deployed, is that travel safely with the preemption system, the benefit not only to the citizens, but also protecting our drivers and those in the emergency vehicles as well. We talk about the cost, when we're in these conversations with chiefs and fire departments, the cost of a collision, with a fire truck is it's astronomical. Those are expensive vehicles, and then not to mention the lives that could be involved. Whereas you could deploy a system at a much more reasonable, cost savings.
It's a great point. One of the things that came out from Chief Tim Milligan, who they've had the system deployed now for 3-4 years. And they've said since they've deployed the system, they have not had an accident in an intersection in the last 3 years. That's amazing. From his point of view, it's just the safety. Now, they used to have minor accidents because, as always, people wouldn't see the emergency vehicle coming in and there would be some small accident. They've had 0 accidents in the last 3 years in their intersections. So there's a significant savings, and the liability and all the other aspects behind it, but also the costs of putting an emergency vehicle, which is $1 million piece of equipment, out of service for a period of time, is a massive cost. So, that's an absolute great point there, Emily, in terms of, not only looking at the cost of implementing the system, but the cost of the fire department as a whole.
And I think, just to share a little bit of my background, this is a near and dear product for me. I come from the hospital side. Before joining Applied Information, I was with one of the largest hospital systems, pediatric systems here in the Southeast. And, when we start to talk about time saved, when an emergency vehicle can get, on site faster, and then even on the other side, if we're working with transporters, getting them to their destination faster, I got to experience that firsthand. And so every second does matter. And I know Peter's going to talk a little bit more about, what kind of time savings that we're starting to see with this and the impacts of that. So this one's near and dear to me, for sure.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll jump back and show some of the information that the fire department can actually see. So, this is one of the trip reports that this is for Odessa, Texas, where they've got very, very active vehicles. Over here, there are 18 vehicles that we're looking at, and they've done 3,700 idle trips from the 1st of September to the 19th of September. And they've utilized the vehicles are available 81% of the time because they're being used for roughly 20%. They did 923 service trips within the city limits and 300 out of the city. So there's a whole bunch of mutual aid agreements that these cities have with each other, but that affects their response times. So what happens is we've actually tracked the response times within the city limits and their mutual aid calls. So important to note here, they've got an average response time of 3 minutes and 36 seconds within their city limits, and they have an average response time of 7 minutes and 7 seconds for the response times for the mutual aid calls, which are out of the city limits going and helping the city next door. We also track the 90th percentile within the city limits. So that's how long it takes to get to the 10% of the furthest trips. So do they need to build another fire station at a certain location? This is using data-driven decision-making to determine what should we do? How do we go about deciding when is the right time to build another station? Now, there's another heat map over here that shows all of the service trips at a particular time. So this is from, basically the 1st to the 30th, and then from 12 p.m. all the way to 12 a.m. to 11 p.m. And you can see where the emergency trips are located. So majority of them, are from 7 to 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. And you can see, wow, we did 23 trips over here on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And, over here, there was a whole bunch of trips all at 4 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now, I don't know what that is. There's obviously something happening around there because that's lights and sirens. That's a code 3 incident. But this is the data that's provided for looking at all of the emergency vehicles over a period of time. Now we can delve into a lot more data. You can go into, each individual trip. This was a 12-minute long trip and they did 9 miles. This was out of the service area and their average speed was 41 miles an hour. We've actually added another field into this, which is maximum speed. But you can go in and look at the details, going into more and more details of the system. For the emergency vehicle fire department, the fire chiefs can look at all of this. We can also then look at intersections, and this goes into the traffic departments in terms of, hey, when did that emergency vehicle come? What happened at that intersection? So if we look at an event over here, this is engine 663 coming into the signal over here. And when he first arrived at the signal, he was 1,000 feet away. and phase 2 and 6 were active. And 4 seconds later, phase 6 was only active. So we turned off the, in other words, the other phase in the other direction was turned off. And 22 seconds later, the vehicle passed the intersection and was through the intersection. And that's when the preempt was disabled. So we called preempt number 3, and the preempt was disabled 22 seconds later. That's how long that emergency vehicle event was within the intersection. But the cool thing with this is all of the data is there. So what that means is if down the line something didn't work correctly, we can go back and look at the data and say, oh, well, someone programmed the traffic controller incorrectly because it was pulling phase 4 instead of phase 6. Oh, okay, well, we better go back and reprogram the traffic controller. So there's a lot of data over there. We can also look at the vehicle side where it drove through. There's a lot of data over there. You can also look at information over here in terms of did the vehicle use its left turn indicators and its right turn indicators during emergency vehicle trips? Wow, that's interesting. How many intersections did that vehicle drive through in that period of time? 10 of them. And while he drove through 10 intersections, he did 132 messages going backwards and forwards. So there's a lot of data here available for everybody to delve into. Now, there's a lot of statistics and things like that. What I'll do is we did a recent interview with Chief Tim Milligan, and I'll play a little short video that actually shows what we spoke about, and just very, very in 40 seconds. But his views about emergency vehicle preemption. So as I bring up this video, you'll see it's just great listening to the fire chiefs actually go out and speak about these things. Chief Tim Milligan from the City of Marietta Fire Department, and we're talking about emergency vehicle response.
The fire service seconds matter. We're always looking for a way to shave time to get to those citizens that need us. We're saving, on average 1 minute per call. That's significant. And we really found a challenge to how do we get these guys to buy in and invest into the system, understand what it can do. Let's just say $5 million for a fire station. Well, we're saving that money because we can meet those response standards now because the preemption system has allowed us that time savings. It's only getting better as we continue to optimize the system.
And I absolutely love hearing Chief Tim Milligan. And if you want to see that interview on our YouTube channel, you can see the full interview with Chief Tim Milligan as he talks through everything, not from the traffic side. Often we focus mainly on the traffic side, but actually from the fire department side and how important preemption is for them, and how they've gone about implementing it over a period of time and some of the tips and tricks that they use.
I love it. And the key piece of data for me in there, and every time he references it, saving 10 seconds or more off of every intersection. And on average, they were going through 6 to 7 intersections per call. So that's a minute. And when I first started, there was an event with the City of Marietta, and they were sharing what they were seeing. And it was in a really nice presentation, but they stood up there and said, a minute doesn't always sound like a long time, but sit here and hold your breath for a minute and see how that feels. If you're the victim, if you're the person having a heart attack or whatever the scenario is, a minute feels like an eternity if you are waiting for help. And coming from the hospital side, a minute matters. So that's where I get a little bit emotional, and I love hearing, the chief speak on that and share his experiences there. So Peter, do you want to do a walk around and take a look at some of this technology here at the iATL, and then also talk about how all this ties into transit? So we've focused heavily on preemption, but let's, we don't have enough time to do it all in depth how we want to, but let's make sure we,
I think that's a great idea, because what we'll do is we'll walk around, we'll show the technology, what it looks like in a traffic cabinet, what the vehicle unit looks like. and then we'll come sit back down here and we'll talk about the transit applications.
Perfect. That sounds great.
All right, I'll grab the camera and you can show us around, and I'll talk through some of these things. So why don't you just take us through the first aisle over here and just explain a little bit about the iATL.
So we created the iATL, the Infrastructure Automotive Technology Laboratory, as a real live, hub for us to come and test all of the technology that we have, and do that in partnership with, different vendors, but also the automobile, manufacturers. So we're working with folks like Ford and Audi, and they're able to come and test these connected vehicle applications with their cars. So not only do we have this space where we're in the lab and it's protected and safe, we're in the middle of Alpharetta, where we've got, Peter, 120 some odd intersections actually connected with this technology. So we see it here in the lab. We can then get in the car and hit the streets and see it in real life. So it's a pretty amazing place for us. So if you've missed the sessions on school beacons, we've got those recorded, and I know Ocean State's got the links to those that we can get you if you're interested. Just chat us in the bottom of the screen and we'll get that to you. But we can look at all the different types of school beacon flashers. So I don't know how in depth, Peter, we want to go here. I think one key component that we want to talk about that's applicable to all of our technology is over-the-air updates. And so Peter can talk a little bit more about that. But and then swappable modems. So, with our service and connectivity and warranty guarantee, at any point, that we have, we could actually show this. I don't know how this shows on your screen, Peter, but obviously we've had a transition in technology, and we will guarantee connectivity no matter what. So as we've gone from 2G to 3G, to 4G, and what's next, our components are all swappable. So we'll make sure that you are always connected. And that doesn't matter if we're talking about school beacons or our intersection monitoring units. So here's kind of the behind the scenes, what it looks like. And then up on the wall, we've got the actual flashers working. So right now, this is kind of a crazy time with COVID, and our school beacons have proven to be very helpful, as these schools don't know what the schedules are. So they can just, with a click of a button, make the swap and have their beacons on or off. So we've got the AC beacons, we've got our railroad warning system set up. So we've also got that flashing on the wall. That's something that's been deployed with Ocean State. So up in the Northeast region, we've got...
That's quite a significant thing there, Emily, yeah. Especially because this works with the emergency vehicle preemption, and actually the preemption for the, what do you call it, the trains coming through, that it actually showing that it's blocking an intersection, and you can actually notify people ahead of time that there's an intersection that's blocked by these remote warning beacons. And this also works with fire departments. So if you've got a rural intersection where there's an emergency vehicle coming out and you've got a hill or something like that, you can also activate remote beacons, like this. If maybe you want to take them to that sign, Emily, and show them what the sign looks like, and it automatically will activate these beacons when you've got a warning, like there's an emergency vehicle coming out.
Right. And so this is, a replica of one of the deployments that we have, and where the sign actually says, Front Street Railroad crossing in use, seek alternate route. Because, for the original purposes, if the train is there for 20 minutes, we wanted to find solution to alert the public to find an alternate route. So, and then as Peter mentioned, how it kind of ties back into preemption as well. We also have, we can go down these other aisles, but we've got...
I think let's focus on some of the cabinets of where the emergency vehicles actually...
Cabinet first. Okay, so this is our NEMA cabinet. So pretty standard here, but what you'll see inside is the intersection unit. So this is what it actually looks like in the cabinet, all connected.
Now this would normally just be under the actual controller, or we would use in the NEMA cabinet, sometimes we use the smaller box. But what happens is this is wired into the cabinet here, and actually up there at the back is where the preemption wires actually, coming straight onto the back panels. And then you've got wires coming in here for, monitoring of AC. We've got the Ethernet into the controller over here, and also monitoring the conflict monitor. So all of that kind of information is brought back into this unit. And the programming of this is just done straight through the preempt outputs going directly onto the back panel of your cabinet, unless you've got a modern controller that can do Ethernet-based preemption. So like this is a 332 cabinet, and you can see the unit installed there. And this one's also interfacing with iTerra's cameras. And we also have the ability of doing preemption through a detector card. So you can just drop a detector card in and you can do preemption through there. But a lot of the modern controllers are now able to do NTCP-based preemption, which is a great way of doing it. We also have a special protocol that we've implemented with Siemens controllers as well that allows it to do the emergency vehicle preemption. And it's very much of the data hub that goes in here to provide all of that.
The other thing on top of the cabinet, Peter, if we want to show them what the antenna looks like. So we've got, you can see right here, we call them our K-cups, but we've got the antenna on top.
That's your 900 megahertz antenna. And then this is the cellular and GPS antenna that can do high-speed communication. So, those cameras that we were showing over there, we can actually, with the same box, stream all of them at the same time. So you can actually see exactly what's happening at your intersections with those cameras.
So it's pretty cool what we've gotten here. You'll see kind of as we're walking down, we're able to work with all different types of controllers. So we're bringing every state into the mix so that we can make sure we're integrating and showing all of this as we need to. But we've got our flood warning system. So I don't know if we skimmed over that, but that's a pretty cool application. That we can actually alert, if a road is about to flood or snow, I guess, we can look at these different types of things. So, and then we can keep going.
Yeah, important is we interface to every traffic signal controller in the US. So this is an Econlight EOS, which is their latest software that we interface to. And then there's Cobalt controllers and Siemens M60, you saw the M50 in the controller as well. And then we've got all the Nastec or TrafficWare controllers where we've got ATCs, we've got 2070s running different firmware. We've even got series 900 and 980s, peak controllers, D4 software, and Interlight. So we represented every single traffic signal controller. We've even got some 170 controllers which are around that we have to interface for Hawaii.
I'll do a little teaser. We've got several setups here that will reflect our CV2X and DSRC and all the testing that we're able to do there with our RSUs and OBUs. So we've got that in the lab. We kind of passed our antenna setup over in the corner here, but that'll be the next session. So there's too much to cover in one. So y'all come back and we'll make sure you have the information there. Peter, anything else in the lab that we want to make sure we take a look at before we go back and talk about transit?
No, I think you did a great job of explaining everything in the lab, and the next session we'll go over the connected vehicle side.
Yep, perfect. All right. So also remember, if you've got any questions, chat those into the bottom of your box, and I'll pull them up, and we'll get to those questions. We've also got Mike with Ocean State on standby, so our local distributor partner. That's where we really feel like we're successful, is with the relationships that we have built with our distributors. So we're thankful for Mike and Gary and the team that they provide, as we start to talk about deployment and support and how this all kind of works together. So
perfect. So I think the important thing is to spend the last 15 minutes on transit signal priority, and also what we've been doing with the MBTA.
Yeah.
In that area. Emily, can you just explain, high level, what the partnership with MBTA is?
Sure.
And how it's been working?
Yeah, so, we have had the opportunity to work with MBTA, as Peter mentioned, and the city of Quincy. So we currently have a preemption system deployed in the city of Quincy. And what we've been able to do is kind of take this to the next level with their transit and talk about their transit priorities. So actually providing priority, providing green lights for the buses so that we can make those routes flow more smoothly, encourage more folks to ride the buses. And the really cool thing about this project is we're doing this with virtual devices. So I'll let Peter talk about the virtual aspect of it, but we can use the same concepts, just with different rules set up on how it would trigger things, but to provide priority. And then we've got a virtual application, so we don't actually have a piece of hardware. Where's our piece of hardware in the buses?
So yeah, that's a great thing. And what we're doing is, so generally speaking, the normal way that we do emergency vehicle priority is we use the same unit in the bus system because that's the best way of doing it. You're using 900 megahertz radio, cellular radio. That is by far the best way of doing it. Also, the latency and all the rest is the lowest. It's the most robust way of doing it. But when you've got MBTA that's got over 1,000 buses running through, they came to us and said, listen, we can't install any equipment on there, but we have a live feed that sends all of our bus information to Google. Okay, and that's how Google Maps grabs all the information, where the buses are, what their schedules are, and so on and so forth. So what we did was we've integrated to that feed that we can track where their buses are, what routes they're on, and we can actually provide bus priority based on that information coming back. So we're doing that, and we wouldn't do the same thing with emergency vehicles just because of the safety aspects, because if the feed gets cut for some reason, their server goes down, well, then you don't have priority or preemption. So on emergency side, it's a different story. On a bus priority side, if a bus stops getting a green light, yes, it delays the buses, but it's not a life critical situation. So this is why we've implemented the bus priority using what Emily said, which is virtual buses. So as the bus drives along, he gets connected, and we've now created what's called an API, an application programming interface, into MBTA's live feed that we can track the buses. And we've actually started providing priority to buses in the city of Quincy, and we're going to start enabling it now in Cambridge as well. So, it's a great way of doing bus priority without actually having to deploy anything in the buses. Now, you do need equipment in the cabinet because you need to interface to the cabinet equipment and pull the priority request and set up everything in the cabinet. But it's a great way of also using some of the funding that's available from MBTA to get equipment into your cabinets for remote communication. You also get remote front panel available, so you guys can program your controllers remotely. And hopefully you can grab some money from another agency, which is more important, where you can get all this equipment equipped into your intersections. Some of the stuff that I can show on one or two slides, the important thing is when you're doing transit signal priority, you're reducing the fuel. It's about 19% reduction in fuel, and it's reduced travel times. Now this travel times is, we actually look at it per intersection, that you're saving the bus between, it's sometimes, 30 to 40 seconds per signal, because we send the signal over the cellular network way in advance. So you can keep all of your traffic controllers in coordination because we send it a full cycle in advance. Huge, huge, huge savings. And also not a big effect to traffic. Now, there's a couple of different ways of doing priority. We do it, you can either give so MBTA gives buses priority all the time. they prioritizing the buses because they see it as, and they're right in saying that it doesn't actually have a massive effect on the traffic if you do it correctly. You can do bus priority, conditional based bus priority, which is another form of doing it. So only if the buses are running late, or if there's a number of passengers on the bus. That's what they're doing here in Cobb County with us. Or there's also headway-based priority, which is keeping the buses 10 minutes apart from each other. And that's another way of it all depends on what the structure is that the bus company is trying to achieve. But the great thing with this is, you can deploy the equipment, you can get bus priority without having to actually deploy, a huge 1,000 units onto the buses if they are already providing information to Google. So, this is why you've got to have the conversations with the transit agency to see what works best. If you've got a small transit agency, I wouldn't go and, try to do the integration. I would just put a couple of these units on. It's a lot cheaper and less expensive than doing integration. But when you've got 1,000 units like MBTA that goes through roughly 90 cities, this allows us to actually get connected and get bus priority in all 90 cities very quickly and easy.
Awesome. So I don't know, we've got about 8 minutes left. I want to see if anybody has questions. Feel free to chat those in. I want to pop it over to Mike for just a minute and let Mike speak on, anything locally that he wants to reference or connect, the dots for some of these things. So Mike, I'll let you take it over for a minute.
No. Okay, Mike, we've lost connection with Mike.
Okay, Mike, we lost connection with you. That's okay. So Peter, we kind of skimmed over this, but one of the things I want to make sure we cover clearly is the service and the connectivity and the warranty. So with our products, we offer a service and connectivity, which includes our warranty, and it's a no questions asked policy. So that includes, we're going to guarantee your connection to the network and providing service and support. So, anytime you're having any issues, that's in partnership with our distributor. And then the warranty component. So, if something happens to one of your pieces of hardware, we will replace it, fix it, no questions asked, no additional cost. And we have different options for that. So you can do a 1 year, but most people do a 5 or even a 10 year. I think most common we're seeing in Texas and Florida is 10 years. And that is guaranteeing connectivity, service and replacements for 10 years, which is kind of,
yeah. And I think the key aspect behind that is what we're doing is we providing a service and a solution, and we guaranteeing that you get connectivity all the time. So no matter what you have, we ensure that the cellular communications is going to work, whether it goes through 5G, 6G, 7G, whatever it is. Because we from the traffic industry, we know that when you buy equipment, you expect it to work for 15 to 20 years. So we've got to back it up for that period of time. And we're making sure that we're selling a solution, not just a box. Very, very important. So when we do something with a city, DOT, whoever it is, it's a partnership because we've got to, you've only got one number to call. And we've got to ensure that all these devices are working correctly. And I think that's a great point to bring up is you can buy multiple different devices from different people, but then you as the city have to become an integrator and make sure everything works, where what we're doing is we're standing behind our product for the next 10, 15, 20 years to say, we're providing a service that's going to keep this stuff running for you for that period of time.
Yeah. And a key component there is the over-the-air updates. You know, there's one thing that we always say, it doesn't matter what technology you choose, find something with over-the-air updates. That is a key component of this, and all the work that we're doing with so many different agencies and cities. And you kind of heard Chief Milligan reference this. As we refine systems and as we learn new things from other cities, we integrate that into the next software update, and everybody benefits from that.
That's the big thing, Emily, is we're working with 600 cities. Each one of those cities comes up with new ideas and new functionality that we don't know about today. You know, connected vehicles, for instance, changing all the time. Emergency vehicles is changing. So what they come up with, the new features, is available to everybody. And that's why the over-the-air software updates. I mean, your phone, you get new software updates all the time. You can imagine buying a phone, and back in the day, you only had a certain set of apps. It's like not having an app store. You can't download anything new. So having over-the-air software updates really provides that ability of getting new functionality, and it's part of our service and connectivity agreement. We update everything for free. There's no charges or anything like that. So when you purchase a system, you're always guaranteed to have the latest technology. And as Emily said, what's really important is actually to go, when you buy the stuff, is to make sure, even if you're buying a traffic signal controller, whatever it is, make sure it's got over-the-air software updates. You don't want to have to send someone down there with a computer plug-in or thumb drive and update everything. It's a nightmare. It takes too much time and effort. So that allows you to actually get connected with all those things. Emily, maybe one thing, maybe we've only got a couple of minutes left. Let's provide a little bit of a teaser what we're going to be talking about in the next session, which is connected vehicles. And I'm going to show a short little video that'll show you a little bit about what you're going to see next week in the session, and then we'll see if we've got connectivity with Ocean State again for them to help close out.
Meet Travel Safely, an app that helps you get where you're going safely. Travel Safely works if you're driving, walking, biking, wheeling, scooting, or skating. Get real-time audio notifications.
Red light.
So you can focus on your surroundings. Get notified when you're approaching a red light, or when it's time to get ready for green.
Get ready for green.
Travel Safely works with local emergency vehicles, helping them respond to calls faster. Get notified when an emergency vehicle is approaching,
Emergency vehicle front.
or when to share the road with your two-wheeled friend.
Cyclist. Vehicle approaching cyclist.
Travel Safely tells you when you're passing a school or work zone, and if you need to slow it down. So whether you're on the road or just crossing,
Pedestrian.
every time you open Travel Safely, you're helping make a better commuting experience for all of us. Together. Download the Travel Safely app today and join our community of users committed to making our roads safer.
I love that video. It kind of just really ties it all together from the connected vehicle side of things, and showcases, you know, the day one applications that we can offer. So we'll send out information for when that next series is coming with Ocean State, and make sure you guys are registered for it. So as for today, if you have any further questions, you know, make sure that you chat them into me. You know, we'll get to them afterwards. If you want to be contacted about any of this technology, go ahead and chat us in right now, and we'll follow up with you. Mike and Gary both, you know, are very well connected with you guys as well. So Peter, any final thoughts? And otherwise, we really appreciate you joining us today.
No, absolutely fantastic. Thank you for hosting this. I think if you've got any questions, contact any of us, sales@appinfoinc.com, and obviously Gary and Mike. I'm not sure, is Gary and Mike there? If we can hand over to them for the final comments. No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We hear you, Mike.
Oh, awesome. I got it. Yes. So, if there's any questions, most people know Gary and myself. Feel free to contact us. Send in a chat, to talk with Peter and Emily. But with that, I think we can wrap it up. And thank you, everyone, for attending.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you, Mike,
you.
so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining this morning.